Hello and welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to Lord of the Rings Online plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, oh, you know what? I'm realizing my captioning is gone wonky. Why is it trying to come from that audio device? Is it possible to change it? Hang on a sec. All right. General. No. Well, it may not be possible. Okay, have to come back to that later. It's using a different microphone, so hopefully it hears things okay. You see captions, that is true. I was hoping to have them run through the same microphone as I am coming to you from. Okay, anyway, welcome to Plugging Along, a stream dedicated to LOTRO plugins. Last time on Plugging Along, we went down a dead end trying to use the effect lists of fellowship members, party members, to have a sense of how many Soliloquy of Spirit buffs and inner strength buffs each of them had. Now, it turns out there was some wonkiness with the API that prevented that from happening, so we didn't really make that much progress last time. So today, we're going to try to maybe undo some of those changes, or at least comment them out so they're no longer effective. And we're going to go ahead and try to make it work just for arbitrary players. That is, when we cast Soliloquy of Spirit on someone, it'll go ahead, the plugin will add that to the list. Just a moment. Soliloquy of Spirit will add that to the to a list, a graphical list, and when that buff expires and we're out of combat, it'll just go ahead and silently drop off the list. And so maybe we'll keep one up for ourselves, probably not. Probably we'll just keep one up for any Soliloquy of Spirit or inner strengths that we think are active, regardless of whether they're in a party or not. So that's what we're going to look at today. As always, thanks. As always, feel free to jump into chat with your thoughts and questions on what we're going to do, or anything else as well. If you want to derail me with questions about something else, that's totally fine. Okay, so we are here looking down on the inhabitants of Winterhome. I've got my trusty assistants, Azurstein and Tourmaline, who I will be healing intermittently throughout this stream. And we've already set up a chat that has standard and error going to it, so we can see what happens from our plugin. I've also gone ahead and pulled up the API documentation for the list box class, because I think it's going to be very helpful in showing a list of boxes. And I've also got a text editor ready to go that I'm going to go ahead and open up our starting file in Documents Lord of the Rings Online plugins. We're going to go ahead and go into Minster Buffs and Minster Buff window. Great. That's okay. I'm hearing that part of the API documentation is behind my face, which is actually okay, but just so you don't think you're missing out on anything, we'll resize it. Okay, so we have been working in the Soliloquy tracker, and I'm going to keep messing up the pronunciation of Soliloquy. It's a problem. None of them are instinctual for me. So if there's an authoritative rendering that you would like me to try to stick with, let me know in the chat. So we have been working with Soliloquy Tracker window and Soliloquy Tracker row. Soliloquy Tracker window is going to have the center logic that keeps an eye on chat. And when we see a Soliloquy of Spirit go out, we are going to go ahead and dispatch that to the correct Soliloquy of Spirit row. So we'll go ahead and have both of those open right now. Okay, so let's get started by opening up my to-do list and see what else did I write down last time that I might have forgotten because I have slept since then. Okay, so we saw party effects are not consistently correct from our point of view, and so we determined we were going to switch to using a chat logger instead. We can consistently see outgoing combat effects where we do a skill on someone. And so we can use that to know that it has happened. And since Soliloquy of Spirit always has a 45-second timer, and Inner Strength always starts with 30 seconds, and that can be refreshed, we can go ahead and figure that out just when we see the chat message. So that's okay. Okay. So we thought about taking inspiration from MiniRaid on how to handle party additions and removals. We saw, as Baz mentioned, we saw that there were some inconsistencies with how to know whether you are in a fellowship or in a raid, and how to see that things are changing. And that one of the ways that MiniRaid handles that is it just reloads itself to get a fresh view of the world when it detects a big thing like joining or leaving a raid, which is a really fascinating way to do it. Just say, you know what? I'm just going to reload and let future me deal with that. I really like that solution. It's nice. And if your plugin doesn't take very long to unload and then reload, it's a really smooth thing. I have been using MiniRaid for years and did not realize under the covers it was unloading and reloading itself like that. So that's really cool. All right. So yes, we're going to switch to storing the rows and something, so we don't have to care about where things are. Oh, well, thank you, Shoreless Skies, for the wish for a good show. I appreciate that. A little bit ahead, just let me know in the chat there. Okay. So one thing we do need to make sure we do circle back around to is localization, but it's a little bit too early. If we had spent time localizing the party code that we had been writing, we would have spent that time localizing it and then had to throw away that extra effort because we ended up not going down that route. So I do like to localize as kind of as close to the ship date as I can for a plugin, because that reduces the chance of me localizing code that's not even going to walk out the door because I end up deleting it. So this is there to remind us we have to do it, but we don't have to do it yet. So choosing the right time to do localization is key. All right, so we've got that. So step one, we're going to switch to use list box instead of positioning the rows ourselves. And then we're going to go ahead and switch to use chat monitoring instead of EfffectsList. EfffectsList? Probably EfffectsList. Okay, those are the goals. So, what is a list box? Well, a list box is a box with a list. Oh, Little Redhead says, for pronunciation, I like Soliloquy. Soliloquy. Yeah, fair enough. Like I said, I am Queen like Queen. No. Queen like Queen. Okay. Like I said, I'm comfortable saying whatever. None of them really feel instinctual to me. I think it's just been too long since I've been using the word regularly. So soliloquy, good enough for me. Okay. So a list box is a control that you give it other controls and it will display them in a list, right? It's more or less what it sounds like on the tin. List box is simply a container that performs automatic layout of its children and monitors when any of the list items are clicked and tracks which element is currently selected. Now, I don't know if we're going to use the element selection thing, but that sounds cool. Maybe that'll be useful. And in the meantime, I do have the idea that you could click on an element in this list and it would select that player. That's a probably not a today thing, but I like the idea of making that happen. Okay, so we can see if we instantiate a turbine.ui.listbox, then we're going to be able to call add item. And in fact, let's just go ahead and do this. We can use this sample code to get a sense of what does this look like without any of the frills that we're going to add. So in the Soliloquy tracker window, we're going to go ahead and do something similar to this. In fact, I'm just going to copy this. And in here, I have a list box. Box says, hello from Turkey. Well, hello. Welcome to a stream about LOTRO plugins. I hope you are interested in either Lord of the Rings Online or plugins or both. Okay, so a list box. We're going to set the parent. In this case, we're going to set it to self.window because we have done things a little bit differently. The random, or setting the background color is good, setting the position, setting the size, that's all good. And then we're going to go ahead and add 20 items to it. Each item, we're going to set a size, we're going to set a background color to a random color, so we're going to be able to see where they are in this. And then finally, we'll go ahead and add that. Let's see, set position, set size. We just want to make sure that our window is big enough for that. In fact, let's go ahead and make that just a little bit wider. Wagner says, until I began watching Plugging Along a few weeks ago, I didn't realize how much of software development was borrowing already written code. Makes sense. Certainly, every software engineer will have their own style, but since I'm not in plugins full time, like I do this as a hobby, my day job is something completely different. I appreciate, as they say, being able to stand on the shoulders of giants and say, okay, well, I know this plugin over here does the thing that I'm trying to do. Now, I'm not necessarily going to copy outright, and certainly if I'm inspired by another plugin, I want to attribute them in the README file. But knowing that another plugin can do the thing that I'm trying to do is very inspiring, because at the very least, plugins are open code. You can always just open it up and see what they're doing. There's no mystery. There's no compiled file. There's no hidden information. So if a plugin is doing it, you can see how it's doing it. And that's a super useful environment to be in when you're not quite sure what you're doing because you don't do this all the time. Okay, so we have a window that's probably big enough. Let's go ahead and just reload our Soliloquy, our Minster Buffs plugin that we're adding this into. So I'm going to go ahead and unload all of my plugins, and I'm going to go ahead and just reload Minster Buff. And I don't see any errors. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and show the Soliloquy tracker. Ah, sweet. So one thing that I see is I don't see 20 things. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors here. Okay. Well, the height of this thing was maybe not tall enough. So let's come back in. Why did I close the window? I don't know. We're going to go ahead and unload. We're going to go ahead and reload. Great. So that's a list. We just said add the item, add the item, add the item, and the list box took care of adding them one after the other. Now we can see it's not supporting scrolling. So if there's too many items there, that's too bad. But it is going ahead and just laying them out for us. Mognog says, question. I use a lot of mods that have their own system to move the window, double-click the icon, etc., instead of the built-in LOTRO UI move. Any reasoning one or the other? No, I think because there's not a built-in system in the plugins themselves. So for instance, and in fact, I've just messed this up. Let me go ahead and unload and reload. Great. So when I use Control / here, this window, the bar that it has here that looks the same as the in-game bar, that is not available through the LOTRO API. So instead, what happens if we come on into Documents, Lord of the Rings Online, Plugins, and Minster Buffs, and Minster Buff Windows, is we have a drag bar class. Now this is available on the LOTRO interface site as a library kind of thing. So if we go to LOTRO interface and we search for drag bar, this is drag bar, and it has some examples on how to use it. But this is an imitation of how the in-game drag bar works. It's not part of the core system. So you can see here, this is what it does. It adds a bar with a label and that little compass rose, and that's how this plugin is doing it. So because this a plugin cannot just say, yes, I want to be draggable by this mechanism, I think some plugin developers are comfortable with this, and sometimes for whatever reason, especially if it's a window, if it looks like this window, just dragging around like this makes the most sense. If it's an object on the screen, it can make more sense to do this. If you don't know of the drag bar plugin and you are thinking, oh man, that's going to be really hard to replicate, well, yeah, it is. So that's why there's a library out there that you can use. And so sometimes it's just easier when you're developing a plugin. For instance, the Opaque Quest Tracker. It was. Oh, that's interesting. I was going to show something, and there's a problem with the save file. So, plugin data expected to close. Well, that's fascinating. I'm going to take a quick diversion because I want to know if that's a problem with like I've created for myself, or is that just a bug? All right. I'm going to hide those plugin data for Opaque Quest. All right. Let's go take a look at that sucker. What is your problem? Oh, that's so funny. I may have done that to myself. Okay, so Opaque Quest Tracker. This Opaque Quest Tracker, when I was developing it, it was just a really fast thing that I was doing on this stream. It was just super easy for me to add a little checkbox in the options here to lock it in place, right? And the idea was that you were only ever going to move it around once. You're going to lock it in place and then forget about it. So it felt like it was actually an inconvenience for it to show up here with a drag bar. Assuming you don't move your quest area around, the ability to move that around at will just didn't feel like it was a useful feature, right? Like, yeah, sure, moving it around once, but then unlock it and then forget about it. And so, yeah, as a design reason, that felt, A, it was way easier, and B, it kind of made sense in my head. So I would say it's probably some combination of the developer didn't know or chose not to use the drag bars library, or for some reason felt like that wasn't an appropriate way to do it. But certainly if the drag bars were a core part of the Lua plugin, I think you'd see more people adapting it for their on-screen UI elements that are not full-blown windows. Now, one of my other plugins, for instance, the Deed Tracker plugin, everything about it is an on-screen window that you can interact with. And so, load. Come on. Apparently, it's thinking. Oh, there we go. So everything about it, from this window to this, that's the option, sorry, to this other window, these are all windows. So you drag them around and you just drag them like a normal window, right? So there's no need to do anything fancy with that. It's when you are making a custom window that doesn't use all this stuff around the borders that you're suddenly responsible for moving the window, right? You have to write the code that detects that the mouse has been clicked and drug and released, and oh, how far have we moved? Okay, cool. You're responsible for all of that. And how you do it and what system you do it then is very open to your choice. Cool. Magnar says, gotcha, makes sense. Cool. I'm glad that was hopefully a bit of insight. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just reload the Minster Buff that we're playing around with. We saw that the list box was doing a great job of drawing stuff, but what it didn't do was resize itself based off of how much stuff was in there. That's something I would like it to do, but the good news is we know how tall each of our rows is. So if we add a row and just increase the size, or remove a row and then just decrease the size, we'll be able to account for that automatically. So the window and the list box get bigger, a new row is visible, we remove a row, they both shrink, easy, he said, setting himself up for a humorous situation later on. Okay, so that's the idea of a list box. I'm going to go ahead and keep this code in mind. Professor asks, is this plugin you're making in the game already? I'm modifying an existing plugin. If you go over to LOTRO interface and search for Minster Buff, can never remember if it's singular or plural. It is singular. Minster Buff. Minster Buff is a great plugin if you happen to play a minstrel, as I mostly do. A Minster Buff provides a handy-dandy UI that tracks which of your ballads and anthems are currently active, and I thought this would be a natural leaping off point for also tracking, if you are in heal mode, your Soliloquy of Spirit buffs and your Inner Strength buff. And what is that? In case you are new to minstreling or healing in minstrel, I spend most of my time in Redline. The Soliloquy of Spirit is a heal over time that can stack up to 3 times, and we can see that happening over here on my character portrait. And for each one that you cast, your Inner Strength goes from tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3. But it has a 30-second timer, whereas each of your Soliloquy of Spirits has a 45-second timer. And so on Treebeard, we've been doing some end game level 50 raids and stuff, and I've been really struggling with knowing which members of my party, my fellowship, which tanks, which people of interest have all 3 Soliloquy of Spirits and a tier 3 buff. And so that's the goal of this expansion on Minster Buffs, is to say, okay, you've cast Soliloquy of Spirit on someone, let's show you, have you done 1, 2, or 3, or have they timed out? And also, what tier is on there? Because it's very possible to see, oh, okay, this person has 3 Soliloquy of Spirits, but only have tier 1 if you've let it lapse. And yeah, so really it's all about, excuse me, giving me a crutch as a minstrel player to do this a little bit better. Yeah, and I find it useful to kind of jump into things that I don't know how to do. Like, I made a plugin to track deeds, so I guess I could do that again, or I could make a completely new plugin that, or change an existing plugin in a way that I've never done before. And so this is cool. But yeah, the base Minster Buffs is cool, and I did actually also make an out of combat timer patch for that, which lets you know how long you have been out of combat, when your ballads are going to expire, and if you jump back into a combat, how long you have to stay in that combat before your ballads kind of re-up, all that good stuff. So you can download the base Minster Buffs, and then you can go ahead and patch it with this to get better notifications on that. It really took making that patch for Minstrel Buffs for me to have a sense of how do minstrels work? How do they do? Because ballads were just randomly expiring. I couldn't get a sense of it. And the logic, and it's spelled out here if it's helpful to know how the logic more or less works, plus or minus some lag. Because, yeah, it was just boggling my mind. Why? I just cast a ballad. Why did all of my ballads just disappear? I don't understand. Well, and in making that patch, I had to kind of reverse engineer what seemed to be the rules for minstrel ballad expiration. Now, I could have it wrong, but it's close. And that's important. Okay, so that's Minster Buffs. It's great. Highly recommended. Okay, that's the wrong key. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and have self.listbox. In fact, I think I'm going to have a capital B equals turbine.ui.listbox. Great. Now, first thing you do with a visible control, go ahead and parent it. Otherwise, it cannot be displayed. All controls have to be in a top-level window to be visible to the user. So we're going to go ahead and call set parent. But self.window is great. That is the window of the Soliloquy tracker. Now, set background color. I don't actually think I want to do that right now. And set position, the top left is great. And set size, I really just want it to be the same size as the window, actually. So we're going to just call self.window get size. Now, get size is going to return a tuple, and we can just transparently pass those two as the 2 parameters of set size. Okay, and we can remove all of this test code. All right, now we had hoped to use party membership and party player objects as a way to get this information. That didn't work, so I'm going to be deleting some of that information as we go through, like this. We're no longer worrying about party changed. We're also not going to worry about the function party changed, or member added, or member removed. Great. All right, process key down. Okay, this is what's necessary for moving the window. So we still want that. UI locked is good, hidden, and oh, here is the important one. Soliloquy tracker window chat received. Now, we want to go ahead and call, initiate chat logger. I had some test code that we kind of ripped out, and yes, there it is. So we want to go ahead and sign ourselves up to get chat notifications. And we can do that with the turbine.chat.received. We can assign that to be an anonymous function or an actual name of a function. In this case, I would like it to call chat received, our chat received. Now, dispatching to class member functions doesn't seem to be quite as native supportive as I would like. So we just define an anonymous function that calls self, the name of the function that I've already forgotten, chat received. Oh my goodness. Self chat received, go ahead and pass sender and args, and we'll go ahead and embed that anonymous function. Now, as I mentioned last time, I do like to go ahead and format these anonymous functions kind of like a normal function, indent them. It makes it a little bit easier for me to see, oh yes, there's a function happening here, even though it's anonymous. And we'll go ahead and dispatch off using the colon notation to get ourselves that self pointer. Oh, there's chat happening. Neat. Oh, Little Redhead, thank you so much for putting a link there. That being said, here's a link to Minster Buffs. I have the power. Okay. Mognug says, I wish SSG updated the API to allow plugins to read the task carryalls. That is a common desire of the plugin community, both the authors and the users, I think, is access to some of those newer features that have come in the game, but have where the API has lagged behind. I've actually found, and this came up in one of the Discord servers, I've actually found that with task carryalls, I sort them by, I haven't opened my shared storage. I actually put them in specific named slots here. So if I just go ahead and search for carryall, and I'm a bit of a carryall addict, so don't feel like you have to have as many as me. But the carryalls for my jeweler slash cook, which are going to have jewels and food in them, go in the, and that's just the name of the character who is that. So anything for Shieldwacht or for jeweler cookery goes in here. So I just happened to know that first carryall. A good point. You said task carryall, but none of the carryalls are visible. So I mentally transposed that in my head to the one I was thinking about. I just happen to know that first one is gems, awesome, and the next three are food in a very specific order. Or I happen to know that the first metal here in metals is all my tier 6 and above metals. So if I pull that out and open it up, oh, there's all my tier 6 and above metals. So having that system where I just place them in specific spots in named buckets has really reduced my need to be like, where is all my stuff? I can't find my things in my crafting carryall. Alt inventory, can't see them anymore. And yeah, so any carryalls cannot be seen by the API currently. The carryall itself can, but digging into it can't be. Actually, what I really wish is during their task board changing around that they're currently doing, is I would really like an interface where you just click on the task board and it only shows you the quests that you currently have items for, but it shows you all of them. So, hey, you've got some broken longswords. Here are all the broken longsword quests, and I'm not going to show you anything else because you don't have those. I think that'd be a really nice feature for me and probably a terrible one for the community in general. So I don't think it's going to happen, but that's my personal desire. because so often it's just like, I have the things, just give me a list of the corresponding quests. Or better yet, just take it. Just take them all. I don't need the quests. Well. Anyhow, where was I? Okay, so we have gone ahead and instructed the chat system that when a message is received, we want it to go ahead and pass it on to chat received. And in chat received, the first thing we're going to do is check to see what the chat type is. If it's not player combat, we do not care. If it is player combat, then we're going to look for a message, benefit with Soliloquy of Spirit on someone. And we're going to use a helper function that was introduced a few streams ago that strips out any color. And then we're going to go ahead and see if there's a match for this. And if there is, we're also going to get the player name as that capture group. And so if the player name comes back not nil, then we know that that was a Soliloquy of Spirit on that person. And that's where it sort of falls down, is we don't have a function to do something with that. But we can. Function, soliloquy tracker window, add soliloquy. Okay, and then player name. Now, that function also does not have anything yet, but it means we can go ahead and say self add soliloquy player name, and then this function's done, right? We have seen the thing, and in fact, we can go ahead and say turbine shell, sorry. I'm second guessing myself. Sorry. Turbine.shell.writeLine, adding a soliloquy 4, and concatenate that player name, just to get a sense that we are seeing those chat messages. So if we go ahead and unload and reload the plugin, and then go ahead and cast Soliloquy of Spirit on Azure Stain, and get rid of my inventory. Let's see, adding Soliloquy for Azure Stain. Great. If we do it for Tidlos, adding for Tidlos, and if we do it for Tourmaline, we see adding for Tourmaline. So that's great. Oh, a second one. Oops, queued it up. So we can see the chat system's working. We're ready to hook it up to whatever we write next. Great. Okay, so, wrong window. We're in the right spot. This is working. We can actually just go ahead and collapse that down then. And that was old code. And great, we've kind of reset ourselves, getting rid of all that attempts to make the party stuff work. In fact, I'm going to collapse down a couple of these unused functions. Or sorry, not unused, but not relevant to what we're currently working on. Okay. Now, question. Okay, I was curious if I had broken the what was working last time. And I think the answer is yes, I have broken that in some way. So let's see what's going on. Oh, yes. Okay. Yes, I was commenting out some debug code that was really getting on my nerves in the middle of a raid last weekend. It's like, why didn't I clean this up on stream? These things happen. And so it did break the rest of this. So what we can see is using the effects list, we can track how many of the Soliloquy of Spirits are on us and what tier our inner strength is. And we also have those counting down timers that are scaled for the length of the effect. So each one of these Soliloquy of Spirit timers is scaled to 45 seconds. The inner strength is only scaled to 30 seconds, which is why it's going faster. And we're going to see in just a moment why this plugin is such a pet project of mine, because inner strength is going to go ahead and expire here in just a moment. And gone. And then we're going to go ahead and top off that Soliloquy of Spirit. So right there, I had 3 Soliloquy of Spirits on me, but I only had level tier 1 inner strength. Now it's tier 2. And so that's what I'm trying to get a sense of, is to be on top of this expiration cycle. Because if you can come back every 25 seconds and then just re-tap, then at least inner strength stays around. Even if the heal over times of Soliloquy of Spirit don't, that 3% physical and tactical mitigation stay around. Little Redhead says, definitely looking forward to getting task carryalls on Treebeard when they're for sale again someday. Oh my goodness, yes. I currently have been using the inventory of some of my alt characters to house my extra task items, and they're getting a little full. So fingers crossed that's part of the December Enmis sales that they've got going on. Actually, I'm going to check the LOTRO store because I haven't checked this week. Well, I don't know when this week is. I haven't checked recently. All right. Carryall Yule savings. Smaller crafting, medium crafting, large crafting. Okay. Well, fingers crossed for next week. Oh, cool. Thanks, Little Redhead, for the market link. I bought like 8 of them because they were half off. I lack impulse control when it comes to carryalls. Okay. So that's the current state of things. Now, right now, the Soliloquy Tracker row is using the effects effect list. It's assuming effect list works. And effect list works great for the current character, but it works less great, as we saw, for others. And so this is what we're going to have to redo. But first, let's go ahead and finish using this list box. So we're going to make a row. And instead of set parent to self.window, let's go ahead and use that list box. We want to go ahead and list box add item. That sounds simple enough. So self.listbox add item, and we're going to say row. Now, let's see, will that look any different? Will it break everything? It broke everything! Excellent. Line 42, error, attempt to call add item. Well, that's because I didn't do uppercase I. Do remember Lua is a case-sensitive scripting language, and it will complain at you if you do not get your cases correct. Wrong button. Okay, great. Everything's still working there. Magnar says, how do you have so many LOTRO points? Part of it is I do a lot of deeds, and part of it is I consider this part of my combination of entertainment budget and also health budget, because if I stay inside and play Lord of the Rings online all the time, I don't get COVID. I have less chance of getting COVID. And being in the middle of a deadly global pandemic has me a little on edge right now. Where was I? Oh yes, I was going to say, plugin manager, if you are looking for those hard to find LOTRO points, Professor thinks I was throwing a few points. I'm afraid not. I do not get the largesse of SSG that way. But what I will say is, Deed Tracker, if you're not familiar with it, is a plugin I wrote that, among other things, tells you how many LOTRO points you can go ahead and achieve. So, for instance, if I was to go to Hrvanian, actually Gondor. This is a completionist character, and we're working our way through. And so we can see I've completed everything in Western, Central, and Eastern Gondor, but in Old Norien, there's still 50 points, and in Far Norien, another 85 points, 80 in the March of the King, 135 in the Wastes, and then continuing on, probably Mordor first, 560 in Gorgoroth, and 135 in Imlad Morhul, and then back to Hrvanian, and we can see there's actually a sum up here, another 1,200 LOTRO points in Hrvanian. There's a total of 4,290 points theoretically that I could get, but some of them are just gated or hard to get to, like allegiances? No, reputation. Sure, actually, I'm going to do an item here to hide completed deeds. Great. So, yeah, theoretically, there's a bunch from Conquest of Gorgoroth, but of course, that's not a just go out and find a couple locations. That's, working your way up the reputation ladder. So that's not a one-shot. But these are all out there. Skirmishes? Do I have any? Nope, 0 in skirmishes. Instances. 835 left in instances. And we can see Tower of Dol Guldur, I have a lot undone, right? So, yeah, that's definitely a thing as I think about deeds. And, just as an example, we're doing the Yule Festival right now, or at least I'm looking down on all these peasants doing the Yule Festival down below me. And if you go into the Frost Bluff Theater, which you can get into at level whatever, let's see, Yule Festival, there we go. Oh, it's not showing them to me, of course. Tell you what. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So you can get 65 LOTRO points by sitting around in the Frostbuff Theater and doing all of the deeds. And you can do that on any of your characters that you want. And so, yeah, do that. Make an alt. Go get 65 LOTRO points. You know, for some of these sales that they've had recently, where it's like you can get a quest pack for 99 LOTRO points. That's 2 full theater runs for alts. That's not too bad. Like, that's really low maintenance where you're doing that and you're just watching TV or watching Netflix or something on another screen. So anyway, so let's go ahead and mark those as complete. So yeah, LOTRO points. Part of them are I spend money on this as an entertainment budget and as a keeping myself healthy budget, but part of it is just deed completion as well. Cool. Okay. But yeah, very very eager or good eyes to catch that. I did not have the store open that long. I'll go ahead and unload that, and we'll just be dealing with the Minster Buff plugin. Okay. Where'd my text window go? Okay. So we saw that changing from setting the row's parent to the window to adding it to the list box seemed to work great. And this is an exception to that rule about parenting. When you add an item to a list box, the list box seems to take care of the parenting stuff itself. Oh yes, Little Redhead points out, we do take advantage of the double bonus LOTRO points on sale. If you do have some money to spend and want to kind of make life a little bit easier for yourself in-game, then when you go to the LOTRO points in the LOTRO store, you can make an Excel spreadsheet and can kind of guide yourself towards which of these is the best deal for you. Or don't. You can totally play this game without spending a single dime. One of our streamers, Big Ed Mustafa maybe, one of the streamers does a completely free-to-play LOTRO experience, and you can follow along and just see what it's like to spend absolutely nothing on here except for internet connection and electricity. Oh, cool. Thank you for sending that link out there. Oh, that's funny. I already had it open. Okay, so Minster Buff. Let's load that up. And yes, we saw that switching to the list box by itself did not have a problem. Now, I'm a little curious, what happens if we do that twice? So, reload it. Oh, it didn't like that. Index out of range. Oh, of course. It probably is using that as a reference. We'll go ahead and do a little fakery here. All right, so we can see that because the window was big enough to begin with, and we can see that when we look at the drag bar, then we get both of those. And they are behaving identically because they are looking at the same information. Cool. All right, that's one more question down. Now, the final thing is, how do we get rid of these? When we add them, we should probably be tracking them in some way. We'll come back to that. We don't need to worry about it right away, but we do want to have a way to remove them from that list box. Although, maybe we don't. I have a thought on that. Okay. We have switched to using list box instead of positioning the rows ourselves. Awesome. Okay, we're going to mark that as done. And then we do want to remember to make the window size more like the initial needed size. Right now it's just some random large amount, and that's not good for us. So that's 1.1. Okay. The other thing I was mentioning is give rows a function to call when they are expired, or a reference to the list. Now, because we'll need to resize the window accordingly. So if we tell the rows, hey, here, call this when you're done, then they can pass themselves as that reference, and we can say to the list box, hey, get rid of this thing, and we don't have to care about it, which is delightful because tracking that was giving me a headache earlier when I was thinking through it. Okay, so we have a row that is currently using the effect list, and we need to transition away from that. So what else is going on here? We see, let's see. Oh, we had some helper functions, get effect name, get removed effect name. These helper functions are going to be unnecessary. So let's go ahead and clean those up. So have we removed everything from here? Yes. Okay, get effect name. You were helpful in debugging, but no more. And get removed effect name. Great. Okay. We can see here at the top just some helpful constants that we wanted to keep track of. How many Soliloquy of Spirits can be stacked? What's the maximum inner strength tier? I don't think those are likely to change anytime soon, but at the same time, SSG is constantly doing class tweaks to try to balance things, to try to maintain a good playing experience for all classes. And given that minstrels are bestrels, they're just the best. So one of these days, SSG is going to actually pay attention to them and be like, maybe you should be less powerful. That will be a sad day. So protect ourselves. Don't go ahead and just put 3s all over the code. Actually say what they mean. That's getting rid of magic numbers, as they call them. Okay, and then we need, okay, there's a lot of effects that I'm seeing here. Let's see, refresh effects. That is a function that is called and looks at an effects list. And that function is going to have to change. But draw effects is called at the end of refresh effects, and it just turns these images on or off and sets the duration based on those effects. That's going to be a thing to pay attention to. Okay, but once we isolate this code and get rid of the effect list stuff, then we should be able to say, here, add this. And I guess the real question is timers. I'm just thinking about how do we want to track this? Because the code that we were basing this on, which was the Minster Buff code, where if you get ballads or anthems, anthems are more directly relevant, then we go ahead and track, oh, that's weird. Sorry, just thinking. Then we go ahead and track how long those anthems have left. But we're doing this with that effects list. And every time the effects list changes, the code goes through and refreshes these values. And so when one of these drops off the effects list, it disappears from here kind of for free. Now, I have problems with that because the effects list is very powerful. It tells you all of the things, but it also, there's a lot of processing going on there. Whereas we could just start that timer and just let it go. And assuming you don't die or something, it's going to expire at the same time as you would expect. But I'm not in the business of changing the main structure of the Minster Buff plugin today. Right now, we're just adding new stuff. So what I want is to track the start time of the last up to 3 Soliloquy of Spirits, right? And when that happens, we can just set the start time for the timer, and it can go ahead and handle that. Now, we know the duration of the Soliloquy of Spirits. In fact, that's always 45. We don't even need to be setting it here. But the start time, we can go ahead and have 1, 2, and 3 start times. And whenever we get a new Soliloquy of Spirit, we can just bump any previous ones over. And the easiest way to do that would be to have 3 variables, right? Soliloquy 1, Soliloquy 2, Soliloquy 3. But if we can be a little bit more future-proofing and just have an array, a table of those values, and then just shove them down with a for loop, then when someday they come down and let you stack 4 of them, we won't be caught off kilter. Oh, hey. Today's streamers are people. Oh, is it last Tuesday? It is not. It's just me today. Okay. Sure, the Skies streams on the last Tuesday of the month, but unfortunately streams at like 3 a.m. my time, so I keep on not catching it live. Probably better for my sleep cycle if I don't, though. Okay, so that's an idea. If we have the start time of the effect, do we need anything else? What else are we doing with effects? Well, we're showing that icon, but we can just show an icon ourselves. We don't need the effect. And the duration, we know the duration, although it might be good to capture that. So, Soliloquy of Spirit duration equals 45, and we'll mark that as seconds. In fact, we could go ahead and mark that in the variable name, not needing to do it as a comment. That way, anytime we use this, Soliloquy of Spirit duration seconds, we know we're talking seconds, not milliseconds for some weird reason. Also, in some cases, this might be a reasonable justification for abbreviation, but SOS is a common abbreviation for needing help in American English, at least. And while I don't want to be seeing that in my code all over. So we're also going to call inner strength duration seconds equals 30. Also, if you're using a more modern text editor, even this, which is a few steps up from Notepad, if I start typing inner strength, I'm going to see inner strength duration seconds. I'm just going to go down there and hit enter. So you only need to type about 3 of those characters anyway in a more modern text editor than Notepad. So long variable names should not be scary because of how much you have to type them. You're not going to type them that much. Or if you let your tools help you, you won't. Or if you just really like typing, that's fine too. Okay. Sorry, I was just noticing. Be wide enough for 3 Soliloquy of Spirits, but do I do that? Yeah, I should stop using so many magic numbers here. We were going to come back and clean that up, and today is not that day. Don't get distracted. Okay, so we have, we need to communicate the add soliloquy player name. And, you know, I was saying later we don't need to track these rows, but do we need to track them? We have 2 options. We can either just send the notification to each row and let them figure out if it applies to them, because we are going to give a row a name and say, this is you. And so we can either just run down the 6 or 7 of those and just say, here you go. And they, most of them will reject it, one of them will take it, or we can keep a list of them. Keeping a list of them sounds hard because then you have to keep it in sync with what's really there. So we're not going to do that, not at first anyway. And so instead, we're going to go ahead and just in pseudocode here, for each thing in the list, tell it, ask it if it cares. And if none cared, make a new row and tell it. Make a new row. And so we'll just go down each one and say, is this you? Is this you? Is this you? The first one that says, yes, that's me, we'll stop. And if none of them said, yes, that's me, we'll make a new row, and it will go ahead and do that. Make a new row, ask it if it cares. And that's pseudocode for you have a soliloquy to handle, maybe. Okay, so if that's the case, we need a function, soliloquy tracker row. And again, I'm just using autocomplete there. I'm not typing soliloquy tracker row each time. Handle soliloquy. Okay, player name. And this is returns true if handled, false if not. Okay. And when we create a new one, we're getting a player. Now, that's going to convert into player name, but we should assume that self.player name equals something. In this case, under the old code, that would be a call to the get name of the player object, but that's going to eventually just be the thing that is passed in, and that's fine. But that gives us a player name that we can go ahead and use. I'm trying to massage the code from one end to the other. I'm not trying to just rip out a bunch of stuff and then try to recreate it. That may come back to bite me, but there's the idea in software development of evolution, not revolution. Little changes to get you from A to B instead of just throw it all away and try to get to B. And there are reasons to do either or both, but when in doubt, small changes. If nothing else, it's more likely to compile and I can or be parsable and I can load it in LOTRO and see what's going on. Okay, if self player name equals player name, then do something and then return true. Else return false. End. And it's this do thing that makes us not just return self player equals player name. We do need to do something here. And we don't actually need to have anything in the else. We could just have this be return false here because kind of by definition we're returning out of that if statement. So we can only ever get here if we weren't doing the other thing. Take your pick which style you prefer. They're equivalent. One of them's got a little bit fewer characters to read. So I'm gonna default to the fewer characters one and return false. This makes it kind of obvious that if we hit the end of the function, we did not handle it. Okay. Do something. So move each. Okay. So for the soliloquy of Spirit. Move each entry in times to the left. And for an example, if the times are nil, and then 10 seconds ago and 15 seconds ago, becomes, and let's add some spaces, 10 seconds ago, 15 seconds ago, and 45 seconds ago. I said to the left. I was thinking wrongly and should be fixed. Okay, so we're going to move it to the right. And so, was I? Hang on. Well, it'll be easier to do it that way. Will it? Data structures are hard, man. Okay, what are we representing? We're representing this. Is there a reason? So if we fill in from the left, we're not filling in from the left, though. We're filling in from the right and going as far left as we can. Okay, Soliloquy of Spirit. If next spot equals max plus 1, then shift each entry left by 1. Example. 20 seconds ago becomes 15, 20, and we'll actually say that that's nil. And then put new time in next spot. I think I'm going to have an off by 1 error there, but we'll sort it out in the actual code. Put new time in next spot, increment next spot. That's going to come back and bite me, though, isn't it, when these things time out? That's also a problem for later. Do something about times timing out. Which is to say, after 45 seconds, we need these things to go away. Okay. So we're going to do something to handle that soliloquy. Great. So we can assume that eventually this function will set up our times correctly. Like I said, it might be easier just to have 3 individual variables tracking those times, but we'll do it as an array probably. And then also, we have inner strength. If active, then increase the tier, max 3, and also restart the timer, 30 seconds. Moobot says, it's Yule time! It is. In the background here, we can see the lovely place of Winterhome. And all those people doing cool things, and we are above it all. As we should be. Okay, so what do we have? We have some code here that we can now translate to pass off to each of these, I think. Yeah, okay, so how do we iterate over, oops, that's the wrong one, the contents of a list box? Well, this box has get item at and also get item count. So we can do a for loop for, and if we forget how to write a for loop, as I so often do in Lua, we can go ahead and say, do we have anything? Yes, we have an example. So in Lua, we have the syntax for variable name equals starting value, comma, end value, optional increment value, but if the increment value is 1, you can leave that. Do something, and then a final end. Great. We can go ahead and say if, let's see, self dot list box get item at I, and that new function that we have, which is handle soliloquy, and we give it the player name, then we're done. So if we leave this for loop, by definition, there wasn't a row for it. So we can go ahead and make a new row. And we already have seen what that looks like. Now, this is where we're going to have to start transitioning away from the working version and kind of cross our fingers as we leap over this abyss. So we're going to go ahead and, let's see, self.playerName equals, do we already have player name? Player name. We do not. Okay, get instance, get name. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and transition over to passing that player name. And then we can go ahead and, you know what, we can just make a new function. Soliloquy tracker window, add player. And that gives us a player name. And we're just, anytime you're using this, doing the same thing more than once, it might be a good idea to extract that out to a common function, so that when you want to make changes to that function, you only have to do it in one place. So in this case, we have a player name. We're going to say self add player and pass, in this case, self player name. And these items are going to go ahead and move on in here, making the new row. And let's go ahead and call that local. Equals soliloquy tracker row, passing, remember to use that function parameter, player name, and then self listbox add item row. Great. That means when we go ahead and tell the row, here's the function you call, when we make changes like that, we only have to do that here. And that means we can just copy this, and if we're here, we can go ahead and add player, and this is player name, and then we can say, I was just thinking, maybe there's a convention that when you add a row, it automatically has a soliloquy starting at that point, because why else would you have a row? Now, right now, we always have the current player. Twice now, in fact. But do we need the current player? Maybe that disappears as well. I think maybe it does. Maybe you only show the players that you put Soliloquy of Spirit on, and if you don't put it on yourself, you don't see yourself there. Maybe you don't want to attract the aggro. Maybe it's only worth it for the tank. You do you. Okay, well, if that's the case, then we can say adding a row assumes automatically adds one soliloquy. Cool. So we should take that into account. Note. And we'll just actually copy that. Copy that note and make sure we do that. To do. And maybe we'll see that. Okay. So what do we have? We have some logic that asks each existing row, do you care about this? If none of them do, we make a new row, and in the process of creating that row, it will care about it. Okay. So we can know when this is happening, and we can tell each row about it, and that lets us make new rows. Fantastic. Now, I don't care about process key down, and add player we'll leave there. We might come back on that one, but I think the window is more or less done now. Except, I don't think we want to add a player anymore when we first load. I think, and in fact, do I care about player name? I don't know that I do. That's very exciting. Maybe we don't add that row. Mognuk says, B4, why are minstrels your favorite class? Well, I have some serious reasons and then some silly reasons. And the biggest one of the silly reasons is that the minstrels just scream so much. Even in healing mode, there's still a lot of screaming going on. And I just think that's fantastic. I just love the idea of reading about a character in Lord of the Rings that just marches out into the fields and just starts screaming nonstop at the enemies. It's very evocative. But more seriously, from a gameplay standpoint, I love two things about minstrels the most. And first is they have range. Everything pretty much except their one melee thing is at range. And some of those ranges are not too bad. So I have a 48-meter range for Resonant Piercing Cry. That lets me start the engagement process way before melee. And I've done Guardians. I love the tankability of Guardians. I love that primal essence of that role. But when it comes to just playing around, I really love just being able to engage in combat and have it be a good 5 to 10 seconds before that thing gets close enough to engage with me. Delightful. And minstrels, unlike, say, lore masters, who are also cool, but minstrels don't have inductions on their attacks at all. Full stop, period. Every attack is instant, and I just find that delightful. Now, whether or not you have any connection issues, any lag between you and the server can also impact this, but I just don't like standing still. I don't like having to get to a spot, stand still, start an induction, and let it land. I just love being able to say scream, 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 scream as I'm running around in circles. And Minstrel lets me do that. It's possible some other classes would as well, but every attack -1 being at range and with no induction is just a fantastic combination for how I want to engage with the game. And so it's kind of like the class was made for me. And so if they ever change Minstrels to having induction bars, I will be a very sad Minstrel player. I don't know, does that make sense? Well, on that note, what do you like to play? And I think someone said they were playing minstrels. Was that you? Okay. We are going over to the row. Magnet says, yep, that makes sense. Lots of screaming is definitely a love it or hate it. And that's fair enough. But plus side, one of the things I really like about LOTRO is the customization. So if there's anything that bothers you as far as the ambient noises, you can always filter stuff out. Like you can see on this list, I have filtered a bunch of things because they annoy me when I'm trying to fish, right? They're noises that are not the bobber going up and down. So just like toss them into ignore, toss them into ignore. So you could definitely do that with minstrel noises, right? Oh, never mind. We are in the middle of a city with a bunch of fireworks. That's not going to work. But go to a quiet place and then record yourself screaming in various ways and just be like, nope, don't want to hear that, don't want to hear that. And you could make a much less screamy minstrel for your own experience anyway. But it amuses me. It delights me, and so that's fortunate. Okay, so Magnite says yes. The filter system is so good. I haven't seen it in other MMOs. The only MMO I've spent reasonable amounts of time with, not recently, it was a decade ago, was World of Warcraft, and I don't remember that being there. I remember being really impressed with it when I was first exposed to LOTRO, and it's like, oh wow, that's cool. Of course, you can just filter out sounds and quests and loot. Why wouldn't you be able to do that? In fact, that's the what's it called? The steel-bound loot boxes. I just don't like them accumulating in my inventory, so I just filter them until I want them. Wearable says, bagpiping dwarf minis and minstrels never need filters because they are the best. That's fair. That's fair. I am endlessly amused by bagpiping minstrels, but for some reason it pulls me out of the combat a little bit, so I like loots better. But from an aesthetic perspective, they are the best. Crafty Irish says, was it ever considered bringing in-game voice chat into the game like ESO? As far as I know, you can do voice chat in here. Let me see. Also, I love being able to just search in the options panel. Let's see. Voice volume, voice microphone. Yeah, as far as I know, you can do voice within the game. I do not know how good it is. There's a push to talk option. So you can get some of those things that you might be used to from like things like Ventrilo or Discord or whatever. I don't know how good it is. I don't know how much people use it, but it's definitely available. And when you see it, I think that's what this is right here. If you can see my cursor over Azure Stain, I think that's a gain for Azure Stain's microphone. So I can be like, no, you're too loud. I don't want to hear you. Magnar says, the in-game VoIP is passable. It's not amazing, but it gets the job done, and it's nice to have it built in. Cool, awesome. I haven't tried using it, or at least not intentionally. I think once in a while I've hit that by accident, and it's been weird. In fact, do I have a key bound to that? That could be a problem. Hang on. Let's go back to that. Voice. Semicolon. But, voice isn't enabled. Okay, so if I enabled voice, okay, cool. Yeah, you can see that right there. When I have voice enabled, I have a little a speaker thing there, and if I hold down the push to talk, I am now presumably pushing to talk to my fellowship members. Mogdunk points out the voice enabled option needs to be on first. So that's the thing, again, I really love about this game is when I'm like, I wonder if something is possible, you can just come in here and be like, I wonder if it's possible to turn off quest icons. Oh, by golly it is, and I forgot to turn those on from earlier. So I'm sure other games have that. Like this isn't necessarily unique to LOTRO, but it's a feature that I like about the game. You know, oh, I wonder if, okay, well, let's just start typing and see what pops up. So very cool. I think I have gotten sidetracked. Excellent. Magnic says, LOTRO has a lot of things that need improved, but really there's a lot of good things in there that are surprisingly good, like VoIP and filter. Yeah, absolutely. There's, it seems like there's a very strong desire at SSG to add more content and also improve what they currently have. And it's funny how we watch the Friday streams of the community manager, Cordovan or Cord, and sometimes there'll be people saying, hey, why isn't there more group content? We want more group content. And then sometimes there's people who's like, hey, there's too much group content. I want to be able to solo more stuff. And, there are vocal people who sometimes want diametrically opposed things, and SSG has a fine line to walk, right? They have a lot of people who are really invested and really emotionally interested in what happens to the game, and their desires don't always mesh nicely. Crafty Era says, so it's only to fellowship members. I see. Yes, I don't think there's a way to just spout vocally to the world. I think it's just people that you are in a party with, possibly raid-wide, but definitely fellowship. And that seems like a good kind of a balance thing. Because sometimes if I was in Bree and some random person ran by and I could hear what they were saying, I don't know that would be as an immersive experience in a game like LOTRO. Maybe on some servers, like some are really roleplay heavy like Laurel, and that might be a really neat experience. But there's enough options for abuse that I'm happy to opt into it with fellowship members. Yeah, Little Red Head says some very passionate players. Absolutely. And so SSG, yeah, they have this fine line to walk with a bunch of people who want very different things for the game and SSG's own view of where the game should go. And so, some people will be like, oh, spend more time on PvMP. And some people will be like, oh, more raid content. And some people, oh, better graphics. And like all of these things are worth doing, right? And with an infinite amount of time and money, they would do them all right now. But I would not want to be responsible for scheduling all of that and picking and choosing which ones get worked on right now. Crafty Iris says, but imagine if Minstrel could publicly sing. If you don't already know it, characters can play music in-game. You do need to have your player music volume turned up. I'm going to do that temporarily here. And you need to be in music mode and have an instrument equipped. But you can see I've got a drum, and I can control what noises come out of that drum with my keyboard or with a saved ABC file. Drums are maybe less interesting than flutes or lutes when you're just free-forming it. But yeah, you can't do voice, but you can do all the instruments that are in-game. Okay, neat. Okay, I'm gonna look back at code, but yeah, keep any more questions or comments coming, whether or not they relate to the code on the screen. Okay, so we have a player name coming on in. So, adding row 4, we're gonna go ahead and keep on spitting out that debug statement. I think that'll be very helpful. And we don't need that anymore. Crafty says, yeah, but they don't play it really anymore. They use ABC file. There are some people who freeform it. I don't. Sometimes when we're standing around on a Hobnanigans field, I'll pluck out stuff. But it is hard to do on a normal QWERTY style keyboard with the number row, with your shifts to go up and down octaves, your keys to control accidental sharps and flats. That's hard because if you want to do chords and you're saying, oh, I'm doing a sharp on this chord, then all of those notes are sharp. And so it's hard to do anything more than just a very basic C scale or C major. Anything that's more complicated than that is hard to do manually, unless it's single note. Single note you can totally do. If you have a MIDI keyboard plugged in and if you can use it that way, you might actually be able to do something a little bit more realistic. But if you're stuck on a regular computer keyboard, it's going to be challenging to do more complicated stuff. And so where a lot of people focus on is the performance aspect of it, the in-game role-playing of it as a musician. Are you singing lyrics along with them? Have you made your own lyrics? Are you timing them well with the music? Are you interacting with a crowd in a way? And so the music can kind of just play, and you're doing all these other things that support and enhance the music experience. That's pretty cool. Also, using ABC files does let you synchronize with other players, so you can have multi-parts in a way that would just be really hard with lag and network issues. And lag I'm using is the wrong term. Network delay between you and the server makes it really hard to play in sync with someone else. Even if they're in the same room as you, the amount of time it takes for their commands to get to the server might not be exactly yours. So a third person listening to you both, the only way they're going to reliably hear both of your parts in sync is if the server is responsible for synchronizing those up. And so if you have more than a single part, ABC files and synchronized playing is a blessing because it means you can have really amazing multi-part performances without having to worry about, oh, I think I'm behind, I think I'm ahead, oh no. So it's a trade-off, right? Absolutely. It's not the same as pressing the keys yourself, but there's still performance aspects to it, I think. And obviously, there are some bigger events like a Weatherstock and other ones whose names are escaping me. And so there is a pretty vibrant music playing and appreciation community within the LOTRO community as a whole. More details about that probably on the forums, because we have reached the end of my words on that topic. Okay, so we have something that is being controlled here. Excellent. EfffectsList. We know now that we are not saving off the player or the effect list, and we are no longer doing refresh effects. Awesome. And we no longer need to worry about adding those callbacks. We have a background color. We're setting the background color. We have a size, mouse visible, player name label. Awesome. The thing we're going to do is make sure we're no longer calling player anything. Awesome. And set mouse visible false. All of that's still good. The one thing I would say is eventually maybe changing the font to be a little bit bigger. I suppose that depends on what size font it currently is. But playing around with that, don't need to worry about that right now. Okay, so we have effect displays and timers for each of the 3 Soliloquy of Spirits. Awesome. Now, the displays. We were using an effect display, which is actually here. Take this effect and display it. I think that's cool. It lets you do things like hover over it and get the tooltip, which tells you how much time is left on it. But because we've got the bar below, and we could even put that text on there ourselves, just statically put it there. I'm not too worried about losing that. And the tooltip itself, I think, might be more harm than good, because if you're in a more of like a raid situation, this information is never going to change as long as you're at a level. You're always going to heal that much for whatever set of equipment that you have. And same thing with the inner strength, which I just let expire. It's always going to be 1, 2, or 3% physical and tactical mitigation for X number. Hello, raiders from Denafia. Hello. Do be warned, LOTRO stream might squelch you if you send too many emotes, but I appreciate your enthusiasm. My goodness, that is a lot of text. Welcome. You have stumbled across a LOTRO stream about LOTRO plugins. If you like Lord of the Rings Online or plugins or both, this might be a place for you. Treebeard? Oh, nice. I'm actually on Evernight right now because it's easier to have random targets to play around with this plugin. Dana says you actually do great work. Thank you. Oh, thanks so much. So today we are making modifications to the Minster Buff plugin to track Soliloquy of Spirit and Inner Buff, not just on ourselves, but hopefully on other players as well. So we're converting code that would have worked if the Lua API was 100% perfect, but because there are some glitches there, we're having to kind of back out some changes we made previously to support the new system. So if that sounds like a fun time to you, I encourage you to stick around. And otherwise, there is some lovely Yule happening in the background. Okay, so we were looking at this effect display. What does it mean? It means that you can hover over it, you can see the active cooldown of that effect. But we don't really need that. Instead, we can just make an icon that is the same size. Mugnug says, can we all agree that D-Tracker is one of the best plugins ever made? Well, I'm glad you enjoy it. I certainly appreciate people who appreciate it. And it's got something like 20,000 downloads over on LOTRO interface, which is a little wild to me. The only thing that makes that number make sense to me is every time you put out a new version and people re-download it, it counts as a new download. Which is like, okay, that's not really 20,000 different people who are downloading it. But still, that's a big number. So D-Tracker, if you're not familiar with it, is one that I put together, 19,591. You could be the 592nd person to download. So if you're interested in tracking deeds, you can pick it up here. In fact, if we do a quick little plugins, You can see a whole list of them. Okay, so what are we doing here? We had an effect display. We really just want that to be an icon. So how do we make an icon show up? Well, I think we just make a control and we set the background image. When in doubt on how to make that happen, we can always look at another plugin that does the same thing. So we can come on in to the D tracker, just as an example, and we're going to go ahead and pull up the main window, and we're going to come along and look for icon. Let's see. Oh, neat. So, am I correct? It's a control, and the background is an image. Great. So, that's just a quick little reminder. So we're going to go ahead and, instead of a UI LOTRO effect display, we're going to make that a control. Remember to parent a UI item, otherwise you are not going to see it. The position's still good, the size is still good. Set visible is fine because these aren't visible to start with, and set mouse visible. So the only thing we need is that background. And again, that is set background. We'll just copy that. And we'll go ahead and, once the size is set, self.Soliloquy of Spirit effect displays. And in fact, we might rename that. It's no longer an effect display. We'll go ahead and set background. Now, we do need an icon for that. Fortunately, I think we've already dug around, and we can see the Soliloquy of Spirit icon is this lovely number here. Now, that number is just a unique identifier within LOTRO. If you look at it in hexadecimal form, you'll see that it tends to, icons tend to start with 4-1. But if you ever see that in, let's see, in decimal form, it's just going to look like a number in the billions. So whenever you're looking at a number that LOTRO has given you that is a really large number, do go ahead and convert it to hexadecimal, see if it's maybe a little bit more sensible there. And since we know icons tend to be in the 4-1 range, this is very plausibly a good icon number. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set background to that number, but that's a terrible idea because we have a variable name for that. Why would I ever use the number? So come on in here, and instead of using that number, we can just say Soliloquy of Spirit icon, and that makes it much easier. And it's easy to be a little bit lazy and just paste that number in, but the problem with this is that it's very difficult to look at that and say, what is this that we're doing here? Why? Why are we setting the background to that? What is it? At least by renaming it Soliloquy of Spirit icon, we can say, okay, this is what we think it is. We may be wrong, but this is the name that we're attaching to this otherwise magic number. Okay, now, I said the name here is probably wrong. We probably want to call it Soliloquy of Spirit icon. So we'll go ahead and rename it like that. You know, Soliloquy of Spirit icons will be a little bit more sensible. Same thing with this timer, actually. I don't know why, but I should have made that plural, and I didn't. So if you're using a more modern text editor, I use Sublime Text, but there are lots of options that are better than your plain notepad. You might have access to a multi-select feature. This has selected every instance of Soliloquy of Spirit icons, and then I can just change them all at the same time. It makes it easy to do a simple rename like that. Or if I wanted all these variables to be J instead, well, selecting I is a little risky, but I can at least come in here and change that to J. So if you're not familiar with that, I encourage you to check out what some of the more modern text editors can do, even basic ones that are not Visual Studio and that kind of thing. Oh, I missed a chat. Dana says, buff bars and combat analysis, best stuff. You know, as a minstrel, I haven't really played around with combat analysis too much, but buff bars looks amazing. Although I use buff monitor more because I have a terrible time keeping track of which foods I have on me and when they expire. And buff monitors just completes the circuit for me where I'm like, oh, hey, that thing ran out. More of that, please. Or, oh, those are less than 5 minutes left and we're about to hit a boss battle. More of that, please. And so buff monitors for those things like, do I have hope? Do I have tactical mitigation? Do I have my battle lore? Do I have my battle warding? It just has made me a little bit more conscious of those positive effects I could have but don't have yet. Do I have my hope token? Do I have my store hope token? So if you haven't checked it out, buff monitors is also very cool. Okay. Let the sidetracking continue. Okay, so we have the icons now. It's a control. It's set to the right size, and it's going to have a background of that icon. Now, backgrounds are a little tricky. There's some blending stuff that you can do. I'm going to hope that this is correct out of the box, and we'll circle back around if there's something wrong with the UI. Really, the point is to convert enough of this code over that we can safely reload the plugin and see what's working and what's not. Because right now it is not working. I can't even do that. It will crash almost certainly if I try that. Okay, and then we have the timers. The timer controls are good. They've been created. Everything about that is good, except, the duration is always the same. This is something we noticed before. We were talking about before. The duration is always consistent. And so let's go ahead and set that duration. And we're going to go ahead and set it for Soliloquy of Spirit duration seconds, which we've already called off. Now, we could just say 45 here, but again, as a magic number, I'm going to come back in a month and say, why is that 45? And it's going to take me a non-zero number of seconds to remember, oh, it's how long Soliloquy of Spirit lasts by default. So it's much easier for me to just name that and use that here. Because when I look at this in a month or a year, I'll be like, oh, okay. I understand what's going on here. I'm setting a duration to a number of durations. Perfect. That looks great. Now, same thing actually for inner strength timer. Let's come in and see set duration. We no longer need to worry about that effect duration. We're not going to have it available to us anyway. So inner strength timer, yeah. We're going to go ahead and set that duration again. We have a variable because right now it's 30 seconds. It might change someday. And either way, coming in and looking at the number 30 is going to take a non-zero number of seconds to be like, what is that? And I want to be kind to my future self. Neat. Okay. So we've eliminated all the effect stuff. Oh, we still have the word effect display. So we haven't eliminated it all, but we're so close. So inner strength effect display. Again, we're going to call that icon. And we're going to come on in and say, okay, what did we do before? Let's just copy that and make this a little bit taller. Okay, so instead of an effect display, we're going to use a UI.control. Great. And set parent, set position, set visible, set size. Great. Right after that, we're going to do a self inner strength icon. We're going to set background. And that background is going to be something. And again, we already have dug out the icon necessary. And you can do this with an effect list. This is a great use of effect list, is grab the icon number of that effect. But in this case, we don't care what the number is. I don't know why I have the decimal version of that number there, but okay. Why not? So we're going to go ahead and set the background to inner strength icon. And hopefully that will work just fine. We'll look at blending and other things later if there's a problem with this. And then the timer, inner strength timer. We already hoisted that duration. Awesome. So the real question is the word effect still in here? All right. Yes, but as a comment. So icons and timers create icons. Great. How about now? Effect. Icon. Okay, great. So that's a good safety check, is we've just confirmed that the word effect no longer exists in the constructor, which is a good sign that we have stripped out those effect displays or effect lists that we were depending on. And again, those work fine for yourself as a player. That's why Minster Buff uses them. It's only looking at yourself. It just falls apart a little bit for other players. Okay, we still haven't figured out how we're doing this, but the assumption is, and this is kind of a proof by induction thing, assuming that function works, uh, is the rest of this working? Okay, so handle soliloquy. And then, you know what? Before, we had this refresh function which called draw effects. But I think as long as the handle function updates whatever timers that are necessary, we're not actually going to need much of what's going on in refresh effects or draw effects. But it might be useful to think about what we're doing. We have a table of basically 3 things. So we had a count of Soliloquy of Spirit and also the effects. We're not going to be using the effects table anymore, but we'll be using something similar. So let me keep that in view here. So our question is, how are we going to track timers that time out? And again, it might be useful to be able to say, please call this thing when you time out. That might involve changing something in the main Minster Buff, but that's okay because we'll just be adding a function. So anything existing that doesn't use that function, there won't be a problem with that. Okay, so do something. I agree. So we have the player name, and we're in a spot here. You know, we have some indentation and some checking here that's going on that I would like to not be dealing with. So instead of calling it handle soliloquy, I think I will call the wrapper does handle soliloquy. And then I'm going to make a separate function to actually do the handling. And it's going to look actually very similar. So handle soliloquy, and then if that, then self handle soliloquy player name. And really this is just kind of separating things out. The check to see if we do it is pretty straightforward. Well, that means we can just have this function handle do the logic. Okay, we think we're doing the thing, we're going to do the thing. And that means we can also call this from the constructor. So the very last thing we can do is we can call handle soliloquy, and we've got that self.playerName. At least I hope we do. Did we save it off? We're going to need to do that. Excellent. Self.playerName equals playerName. Excellent. And that satisfies that to-do item, that note we made for ourselves earlier. So coming on in, we save off that player name. And last thing we do is go ahead and say handle that. Skipping this check, although we could say does handle. And you know, I'm still not happy with that name. Handle soliloquy if, you know, if me. If handle soliloquy, question mark. Naming things is hard. We'll stick with does handle soliloquy, but I am not satisfied with that. Okay, returns true if handled, false if not. Okay. Maybe I should say did handle. Okay, we'll change it to did handle. It's a check on the past. Okay, so handle soliloquy. We are in here, by definition, we are doing the thing. So here's where we need to be thinking about that logic. So if we have previously said something like self.soliloquy of spirit start times equals a table, we'll want to have that in the constructor. Then we'll be able to do something with that. Okay. Self.soliloquy of spirit start times. We might also want that Soliloquy of Spirit count. We can actually make use of that still. I believe that is also, no, that may not be defined in the constructor. It is now. Oh, and Little Redhead has pointed out that crafting carryalls are 50% off right now. If you like crafting carryalls as much as I do, and I like them a lot, this may be the time to get them. What I would really like are some task carryalls, but crafting carryalls are also pretty spiffy. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I may have picked up 10 or so of those crafting carryalls, which is about enough. I can probably deal with that. 11 might be too much. Okay, so we have a count of the start times and we have a table of the start times. Great. Now, this is going to need to be decremented when one of those timers runs out, but we're not there yet. For now, we'll come back to that. Okay. So we have if self.soliloquy of spirit count is equal to 3, then we need to, oops, we're going to go ahead and move this comment up. I think it's still useful. We're going to shift each entry left by 1. So, and again, I'm just instinctively using that magic number, but max soliloquy of spirits is a thing that we can reference, and that'll make it a little bit easier if that ever changes. So, if that equals, which is by default right now, 3, then we're going to shift each one left. So for I equals 1, I is, oh wait, sorry, the max. So max soliloquy of spirits minus 1, do. And we're going to go ahead and say self. And here we go. Here's where we referenced that before. The start times of I equals the start times of I plus 1. So we shifted them over. And then the last thing we want to do is if self.soliloquy of spirit count is less than 3, then self.soliloquy count equals that plus, oh, I pasted the wrong thing. The count equals the count plus 1 if it's less than 3. So if it's already 3, it's as big as we're going to get. And again, that 3 needs to not be a magic number. Okay, so that's how that thing is going to increase. We've handled the case where we're full, and now we just need to go ahead and put the current time into that next slot. And so how do we get the current time? Well, we can get a close approximation from the turbine.gameplay, I believe, or turbine.engine perhaps. Excellent. Get game time. Now, is this the right function to call? Are there other time functions? That's an excellent question, but if I go ahead and do a recursive search, which again, hopefully your text editor of choice supports this kind of recursive searching. I'm going to search for, in Minster Buffs, I'm going to search for get game time. Excellent. We seem to be using that all over the place. I'm just going to copy paste that. All right. So we're going to say local current time equals turbine.engine.getGameTime. Now, as we've learned on previous streams, it seems like this getGameTime is always going to return the same value each time you call it within an execution space. So the game calls your function. You could call this 17 times. It seems like it will always bring back the same answer. You have to return control to the game, and then the next time the game tells your plugin to do something, you'll get a new time. So that can make timing things more challenging because you have to capture this in one go and then wait for a second callback to figure out how much time has elapsed. So just bear in mind if you're trying to time something for performance purposes, this is going to be more challenging. Okay, so we have the current time. We know we're putting the new time in the same spot, and we're going to go ahead and move increment down here. Excellent. We're going to go ahead and say self.soliloquy of spirit timers of soliloquy of spirit count equals current time. Great. Do something about times timing out. We'll make a little to-do item about that. I'm not ready to think about that, but it is a necessary thing eventually. Okay, and then finally, inner strength. Okay, same thing. If So if we can assume that self inner strength tier defaults to 0 and is reset to 0 when that expires, then we can always say that equals that plus 1. And then so we have the tier, and then okay, draw effects is maybe really useful still. So I'm not going to worry about the drawing of it quite yet. But we are going to have to adapt it. So it's going to take care of using inner strength. Awesome. The other thing, though, is we want to restart that time. And so we have the inner strength set start time. We're going to go ahead and update that to be set start time equal to current time. Is that the right way to do it? I feel like changing the icons, that might be not what I want to do. So instead, we're going to go ahead and self.inner strength timer. Oh, wait. I just realized I was misnaming something. I should have used start times, not timers. I'm going to confuse myself if I don't do that. So we're saying the start time equals the current time. Much better. And then we can go ahead and say inner strength timer start time equals current time. Great. So that'll let us be setting up the internal data here, and then the draw effects can use that data to tell which icons are doing what. I think that'll be better. Okay, so we're getting the current time. We're moving icons over if we need to. We are putting an icon into the current spot. The count starts at 0, and we're going to have to remember to decrement that, to decrease it by 1 each time an effect expires. Coming back to that later. Do something about timing out. Yep. So we put that in, we increment to the next spot if we're not already at the max one. And then inner strength, increase the tier, restart the timer. In fact, it's not even if it's active. Always increase the tier, always reset the timer. Okay, so that is a way maybe to handle a soliloquy. Now, we're getting called when we have a constructor and also when the chat window sees that needs to happen. So finally, refresh effects. Are we going to use that at all? No, we just rewrote that with handle soliloquy. So refresh effects, I don't think we need that anymore. We don't even have an effects list, so that's not good. Sorted effects, don't need that. Count, effects, inner strength, effects. This is just sorting out which one of those effects are necessary. So we're going to go ahead and be ambitious and just delete that function. And then draw effects. We still want to do this. And so at the end of this function, we're going to go ahead and call draw effects. And we're going to remember to call self colon because otherwise it won't work. Okay, we're in draw effects. And in draw effects, that's weird. I just got a window to set up speech recognition, but I don't want to do that. Thanks, Windows. I don't know why you did that. Set up speech. And nothing happened. Hey, Microsoft. Okay, so in draw effects, we have the Soliloquy of Spirit count. And, well, that's interesting. Previously, we could, in that effects list on ourselves, we could actually see 4 of those because we would bounce up to 4 and then back down to 3. And so we actually had a check here to make sure that we handled that okay. I think we actually don't need that anymore. It might not be bad to leave it in here, but we don't need to because we're going to control that ourselves. We're never going to set a 4th thing. Mognog says, are you using git commits or just uploading all at once? So I will be using git commits. I use a tool called Fork, which is a local program that wraps around a Git repository, and then I use GitHub to store off my commits. I've been very bad about doing commits on this particular endeavor, though, because I'm really just winging it. I don't know what the final version is going to look like, and I'm a little hesitant to commit a bunch of things that maybe won't go into the final version. And so let's see, Minster Buffs. So I have a Minster Buffs local repository, and so that's where I've been tracking those changes for the in-combat plugin timer. But when I'm ready, I'll go ahead and make a branch here and start making commits for the Soliloquy tracker, because I think Minster Buffs might be a good place for this. But since I'm not using the EfffectsList, it maybe doesn't have to be, right? This could be a standalone plugin. But regardless, I'll make a branch and I'll start doing some piecemeal commits that kind of make sense once I get to a more final version. As it is, I've been kind of veering really heavily, and I haven't really felt like I've gotten close enough to the final version to be comfortable with just doing commits. But yeah, so if you haven't used it, let's see. Unfortunately, fork is a really hard term to search, especially if you say git fork, but you can go to fork.dev, and the tool is called Fork, and I found it very handy. I actually use it in my job as well as in my personal for Git, and I think I might be able to wrap around other things, but it's specific works very well on Git. So some of our previous streams for some of our other tools, I've done step-by-step commits where each time we make a thing work, go ahead and take that snapshot, take another snapshot, take another snapshot. But because this is such a drastic kind of a noodling on what's possible, and as we saw, if I had committed stuff from last week, I would just have to uncommit it this week, which is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That's how the tool is supposed to be done. But it just felt like a little bit extra effort that I didn't have time for. So a better developer than me would be committing more regularly on screen right now. But I will be committing stuff once we kind of end on that final form of this first version of the Soliloquy tracker, and it might change drastically after that. Okay, so we have a count. Now one might ask, why did we save that off? Oh yes, of course, because we're, so if we only have, say, 2 Soliloquy of Spirit, then we want to go ahead and set up 2 of them as visible, 1 of them as not visible. And in fact, I wonder if there's a way to cancel a timer so it stops caring about things. I'm going to come into the timer control, and let's see, pause. Awesome. So we can go ahead and say self.soliloquy of spirit timers I pause, and we can say resume up here. And that way we can avoid the once updates for this control as long as it's not going to do anything with it anyway. Same thing, actually. We'll do the, let's see, self.innerStrength timer. if show inner strength, then resume. Else self.inner strength timer pause. Great. Okay, so what is this function doing? For the first n, we are going to go ahead and realize that we don't have this thing that this is talking about. Of course, because we no longer have the effects. So is that going to be a problem? Well, we don't need to set an effect. Setting visible, yes, we want to set that icon to be visible. Okay, that's actually not bad. And then set start time. Well, that's what the Soliloquy of Spirit start times is right here. So instead of the effect get start time, we're going to use Soliloquy of Spirit start times oh my goodness, that line's getting long. So I'm just going to go ahead and make that a new line. Okay, set visible and resume. Lovely. Now, one does wonder. Okay, I was just checking something. And then for the rest of them, we're going to set the visibility to false. We're going to set the visibility of the timer to false and go ahead and pause it just for emphasis. Okay, show inner strength. Is the inner strength effect nil? Well, that's not going to work anymore. So instead, we're going to say, is the inner strength tier greater than 0? It's going to be 1, 2, or 3. Oh, you know, I didn't actually check. If that's going to be important, we do not want a tier 4. Do we? No, we don't. If that is less than 3, then increment it by 1. And that'll prevent our inner strength tier from spiraling off into larger numbers. All right, so if the inner strength is greater than 0, then yes, we're showing inner strength. We still don't have the effect, but we don't need it for that icon. We just need to set visible to true. Hang on a sec. What on earth was I doing? Oh, yes. The inner strength tiers are those little white dashes that appear. Of course. So icon set visible, else self.inner strength icon set visible to false. Excellent. And then the timer, we're going to set that start timer. We're going to resume. We're going to pause. Great. And then the inner strength tiers, 1 to max tier, set visible to is it greater than or equal to is that tier greater than or equal to I? And those are those little dots that show us the tier. Okay, do I think this is correct? Yeah, it's probably close, but 50-50 that I get some sort of a load time error. Oh, icon, oh, you know, that is so much better. Yes, I do not need to set visible in here. It is just the state of that. So we're going to set visible, and then same thing here. We're going to set the timer visible. I did better last time. Okay, so we have gone through all 200 lines of this, well, now 200 lines of this file, and the time has come to, oh, well, it loaded. That's a little alarming. There we go. Okay. So we can see an error in the error list here. Soliloquy tracker window, line 81. We can see for limit must be a number. Oh, yes, of course. Effect count is not valid. Okay, so... of course. So what we want to do instead is we're looking at the self.listbox, and we want to get that count. Oh, I've navigated away, but turbine.ui.listbox, and we want to get item count. This was a holdover from when we had that effect count, so that was one thing that should have changed and didn't. Okay, So let's go ahead and try it again. Okay, new error. Awesome. But we got farther. Now we're in soliloquy row, line 119. Handle soliloquy. I forgot to write self:, so of course that is not going to work. Okay. Attempt number 3. Oh, another problem. 189. This is why I like that evolutionary approach instead of revolutionary approach. We did some major cuts into the code here to change it around, and there was no getting around that. It just had to be done. But it means there's so many places for little typos to creep in. All right, attempt to index global effect. Oh, yep, there we go. Effect. I forgot to use the inner strength start time new variable, and I forgot to do a search for effect. So we need to that's a long line, so let's implement it. And then effect. Oh, I still say draw effects. You know what? We're going to call that update UI. So the word effect no longer appears in this file, so I can't be caught out by any of that anymore. And then let's go ahead and make, oh my goodness. Okay, a second one. Oh, hey. Yeah, okay, that didn't work. Let's see. 82. Interesting. Get item at I. Attempt to index a nil value. Really? It told me it was a valid value. Okay. Well, first of all, let's come in. Okay, we can see did handle soliloquy is the name of it, but we'll go ahead and update. And then we'll go ahead and save some stuff off. So first of all, we have local row equals self.listBox. We're going to go get item at I. And then local did handle equals row did handle player name, and then if did handle, then return. We're just going to break it out into pieces a little bit easier to tell where the problem is. Okay, so it didn't find one. What happens if it does find one? Great. Okay, line number 83. Local did handle row is a nil value. That's fascinating. What's going on there, ListBox? What are you doing? Okay, so we're going to do some debug statements now just to get a sense of what's going on. So we're going to do a turbine.shell.writeLine, and we're going to say list box count, and in fact, let's go ahead and save that off. Local count equals, that'd be a little bit easier to count. Okay, great. Now, a thing might be that this could be a random place where the list box is 0 indexed instead of 1. The first element might be index 0. That can be a thing to watch out for. My preference is to start counting at 0. You count to 10, you want to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It just makes life easier in a couple of ways. But there's certainly languages out there like Visual Basic where their default is to start at 1. And I can't remember what Lua does, so let's investigate. Okay, so we can see list box count is 0. List box count is 1. Awesome. All right, so it looks like get item at does not specify, but we're going to take a guess and say I minus 1 and see if that fixes the problem. Okay. It did not. Neat. Okay. So let's see. What else can we do? Get item. Oh my goodness. Oh, get item at assumes a grid layout. I have been using that incorrectly. I need to use get item. Okay, well that actually simplifies things a little bit. That's 2 fewer characters to mess up. Okay. And yes! No timer. That's not great, but okay. And the important thing, Azure Stain, who's been standing by patiently for like 90 minutes. Ah, yes, I can get an Azure Stain and I can get a Tourmaline. Oh, that's exciting. Now, we don't have a way to handle when the timers run out, but that's okay. I don't mind. I'm just thrilled. This random person, Imidon, you're on my list, and Paper Ink, you're on my list. Okay, they're not on my list because we are not growing the window when we're adding this thing. Okay, so that's a to-do item. Okay, 4. Grow window when adding a row. And I should say window and list box. And a corollary to that, shrink window and a list box when removing a row. Now we haven't gotten to that part yet, but that's okay. Okay, so we've actually switched to chat monitoring instead of EfffectsList. Done. Make the window size more like the initial. We'll come back to that. Okay, so what's going on with these timers? In fact, maybe I got over ambitious with all these pauses and resumes. Update UI. Let's go ahead and unload and reload, and we'll go ahead and put an effect on Azure Stain. So the first thing we can see is that the timer for Inner Strength is working great, and the timer for Soliloquy of Spirit is not. So let's take a look at the update UI and see what we can do about that. So Soliloquy of Spirit, set visible, set start time. Okay, start time, start times. Oh, you know what we didn't do is kind of zero things out. That could be a concern. But we've got the count going, so it may not be a problem to have kind of garbage times in there. Put the spot in there so that it equals current time. And the count. Okay, the count is starting at 0, so that's good. Okay, so what are we doing down here? We're setting the start time. Setting visible is true. And that resume and pause are there. Okay, well, I am curious, just to make sure those aren't causing a problem, we're going to pull those out. Okay, so the other thing to be concerned about is duration. Inner strength duration seconds, yeah, great. And set duration for the timers. We're also setting that. That looks good. So what's going on here? Why is this timer confusing me? That makes me sad. Well, let's go ahead and, again, another debug output. So shell.writeLine, setting timer, and this is I, 2, and we'll just go ahead and use those start times. And I want to do this because inner strength is working. So if I can go ahead and say setting, Soliloquy of Spirit and inner strength. If I can figure out maybe there's something different with what I'm doing here, because one of them is working, that's great. I love it. I want both of them to do that. Okay, so let's load up. Let's go ahead and have an error 175. Great. Oh, well, that's good. Neat. Okay, so we can see the start times is null. So we've done something wrong in our logic up here. So look at Spirit start times equals current time. We didn't increment first. So we set it to 0 and it should be 1, of course. Okay, so we need to increment if possible and then put in the new spot. I think that makes a lot of sense. 189. Oh, of course. I doesn't exist there, you silly person. Okay, awesome. So by not setting the timer to a nil value, we actually see the timer progress, which is lovely. Now, new question, does that actually fix the second problem? It does! Oh, that's so exciting. And the third one, okay, so we can see 3 of them. We can see what tier our inner strength is on, and we can see times counting down. And if I go ahead and select Tourmaline, who's running around on the stage over there like a mad hobbit, we can do the same thing here. Now, big question. We're going to go ahead and not see the effect expire because we're going to be responsible for removing that thing from the list here. But that is super duper awesome. I am super pleased with that. So we have a way to arbitrarily, can I do that on an NPC? No. Oh, it can't. I did it on myself. Okay, that's good. I was a little worried there. All right, select someone else. Select. Oh, of course, my window is getting in the way. Select that person. Sweet. Okay, so the window's not resizing, so we only have a space for about 4 of these. But that's a problem to solve. And we want these effects to tell us when they're done so we can remove them. And when a row is completely done and we're out of combat, we want that row to strike itself as well. There's a frozen person on stage. Okay. Well, I can't fix them. Okay. Oh, interesting. Oh, good. Yes, the logic works for, adding new. Oh, of course, I don't have an hover over. Adding new Soliloquy of Spirits, we're seeing that displace existing ones. So Azure Stain, get a new one, and we can see those shifting over. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that. Okay, so a lot of really positive stuff here. We have arbitrary people we can target. We don't have expiration of effects or of rows yet, but that should be really straightforward now that we've got this going on. And once we're able to add and remove rows, we can go ahead and add in the tidying up logic that makes the window bigger or smaller. The only concern I have is that we don't really have anything that says, well, you just got too tall here. And a thing that might be useful is using that grid view of a list box. But I think for right now, maybe we'll just say, don't do this on 50 people while you're in combat and it won't be a problem. Obviously, we want to support 24 people in theory because you could be in combat for a long time with 24 people and these could stack up. But that's a problem for a future stream. Okay, I think we have made some great progress, and so we're going to head towards wrapping up here. If you've got any final questions or comments on this or any other LOTRO LOTRO topic, go ahead and throw them into this, the chat here. I'm going to take a drink and glance at my notes and make sure I haven't missed anything. Okay. Cool. Just clearing up some old notes here. Baz on the previous stream mentioned an entity control that we could use for maybe clicking here and passing that click through to a player. I don't know if that's possible without also doing things that we don't want to do, but I really like the idea of being able to click Azure Stain here and just have that player selected, or Tourmaline or Tideless or Fingolfin if they're in range, and then just be able to immediately hit that Soliloquy of Spirit button. Suppose I also wouldn't mind a little plus button, like click here and then click plus and it just does the thing, but that's also a problem for a future stream. Okay, well, neat. I think that is really cool. I'm very pleased with the progress. And I think I'm past my time, and that's all we're going to cover today. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of LOTRO plugins. I am super pleased with the progress we've made so far. I do hope to see you next week. And until then, keep plugging along. All right, bye-bye now.